Great. So who I am, well, Evelyn already introduced me, but just to remind you, I'm Erica Schlaikjer. I'm a creative strategist at Huge in Washington, D.C. I am one of 3 co-founders of MediaRise, and my alter ego superhero identity is a benevolent media creator. I believe that our superpower lies in our stories and the way that we tell them. Our stories define our history, our beliefs. In short, they create our reality. Now, the problem is, in this media-saturated world that we live in, sometimes it's not very empowering. The problem is that media can be downright harmful or reckless because it's meaningless or superficial or sensationalist or violent. And yet we all agree that media is powerful. So if we're going to use that power, why not use it for good? I often tell people that I feel like if we actually consumed or digested media the way we eat food, we would be overweight and undernourished. So with that, tonight I'd like to talk about why I'm passionate about using media for social change, where I've been, where I'm going, and what I've learned along the way. So thank you for the opportunity to share this story, and I'd love to connect with all of you if you're in the same space and passionate about the same thing. So let's start with where I've been. When I was a baby, my parents said that they would get me to stop crying by shoving a magazine in my lap. And then when I was a little girl, I loved to write. My teacher would actually have to excuse me from regular lesson plans so that I could scribble pages and pages of stories in my notebook. When I grew up and went to college, I ended up studying journalism and became a reporter. And I found myself increasingly interested in writing stories about social and environmental issues. So, you know, the rise of the Latino workforce, the effects of indigenous cultural tourism, recycling and corporate social responsibility. You know, I just naturally was drawn to those types of stories. But after a while, I worried that my byline wasn't making a difference. Now, I do believe that journalism inherently is good for society, but maybe, perhaps egotistically, I wanted to be written about, maybe. I found myself wanting to be someone who is in the field or on the ground rather than an observer, because I thought that would allow me the chance to make more of an impact. So I consciously made the decision to join the nonprofit sector. It was interesting because at that time it was like 2007, 2008, and if you think about it, journalism itself was being disrupted by the rise of social media. Twitter just came on the scene, and then also the financial crisis on Wall Street disrupted everything. So let's just say that things were in flux, including my own career goals. So I made this lateral sort of switch into the nonprofit world, thinking I would make more of an impact. And I was really lucky to start working at this awesome environmental think tank in D.C., where I worked on a sustainable transport program, where the mission was to help developing cities around the world make sustainable transport a reality. So I was part of this really small communications team, and we created a community of people, encouraging them to walk, bike, and take mass transit. And we used communications and marketing to do that. So through blogging, social media, events, annual reports, photography, video. I got to do a little bit of everything there. But then it was funny because I ended up running into the opposite problem. So back when I was a journalist, I was worried that storytelling wasn't making enough of a difference. And then here I found myself worrying that storytelling wasn't being valued enough. So here I was working with all these super talented, smart people who were working in the field and on the ground like I wanted. But sometimes it was hard to convince them to invest in communications and marketing because they were so focused on their technical work, whether it was measuring carbon emissions or planning bike lanes or whatever. So I kind of like reevaluated everything and came up with this new dream job, this dream job title, which was Benevolent Media Creator. I knew I wanted to do something good and compassionate. I wanted to stay in media, and I always wanted to be creating. So I kind of kept that on the back burner, and eventually created a blog called Benevolent Media. And it was sort of my personal collection of people, projects, and organizations that inspired me. And I just kind of kept that running in the background while I stayed at my day job. And then one day I enrolled in a leadership course, and we were tasked with designing a community project. So I was like, okay, cool, why don't I take, like, how do I take benevolent media beyond just me and beyond a blog and actually create a community around it? And I thought, okay, well, why don't I host an event like this? And I had it in my mind, and I presented this to my coach. I said, I'm going to do a panel discussion with like 5 people, like 100 people in the audience. It'll be on a weekday evening, happy hour style at a coffee house or something. And he was like, Erica, why are you playing so small? Why don't you consider that, why don't you be open to the possibility that this could be way bigger than that? And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, all right, well, why don't I throw a festival? That's big. Although I had never organized a festival before. This idea of a panel discussion ended up being about a dozen events over 4 days, and 500 people came out. So then I thought it was just a fluke. So I tried it again 7 months later, same thing. And so I was like, awesome, this community showed up, it exists. Now the problem is I ended up quitting my nonprofit job and thought I was going to devote myself 100% to events and consulting. But without a proper business model and paying clients, I soon ran out of money. So I had to think again, well, what is it that I want to do? And I realized I was missing a really important experience, which is that I had worked in newsrooms, I had worked in nonprofits, but I had never worked at a for-profit company. So I thought, okay, well, why don't I join an agency where my storytelling and creativity can really thrive? So I luckily found this awesome job at Huge, which is a digital agency. They have offices all over the world. I'm based in D.C. And I joined as a community manager for a luxury automaker. Now, believe me, the irony is not lost on me that I was coming from a sustainable transport organization where I was encouraging the community there to bike, walk, and take mass transit everywhere. And now I was dealing with an entirely different community telling them to buy luxury SUVs and sedans. And that actually came up in my job interview. And you know, they asked me, you know, how do you feel about that? And I was like, well, they're doing something right. Like, car marketing is some of the most successful marketing in the world. I want to learn how to sell something like empathy the way they sell cars, or education, or wind energy, or whatever. And so I got the job, and over the past 2 years, I've had a really fun time creating community through experiential marketing stunts, these sort of second screen social media experiments, and even good old traditional blogging. And I realized that our clients also have causes and communities that they care about. So whether it's a medical research organization that wants to advance science, or a pharmaceutical company that wants to shift perceptions on aging, or yes, a luxury automaker that wants to sell cars. What I'm learning is that advertisers are some of the best storytellers in the game, and if only the social impact sector could benefit from that. So where am I going now? Like I mentioned, I'm one of the 3 co-founders of MediaRise. It's a startup nonprofit. My 2 co-founders, Mandar and Srivi, are based in Houston. I'm in DC. And we are committed to connecting people and ideas to promote meaningful media. And we have 3 big calls to action. 1 is to increase empathy. 2 is to increase collaboration. And then 3 is to really celebrate success stories of people who are like me, interested in creating and consuming media to accelerate social change. And we have basically 4 groups of people that we want to reach out to and involve, and I'm sure all of them are represented in this room. First, it's the creatives. So these are the photographers, filmmakers, storytellers, writers who produce really amazing media but may not know how to use their creativity for impact. And then there's the change makers, so the nonprofit activists, advocates, maybe government leaders who have really worthy missions but may not know how to tell their story in the most compelling way to drive the most impact. And then the third group would be what I call the money makers, business people, people that work at PR companies, ad agencies, entertainment companies, maybe news executives, who hold a lot of money and influence, but may not be directing their resources in the most positive way. And then the fourth group of people are educators, so parents, teachers, scholars, researchers, who hold a lot of knowledge about media's impact on society. So I was asked to provide some key takeaways, and honestly, you can take them or leave them, because I feel like I'm still learning to practice what I preach. So at first, when I did this presentation, everything started with you should blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to practice saying I should blah, blah, blah. So the first lesson I've learned is to find my people. I was at this social innovation fellowship a couple years ago, and one of the facilitators asked us, why do you do what you do? Not what do you do, but why do you do what you do? And honestly, like the first thing that came into my mind was, well, I just want to hang around cool people and get inspired. And I felt so lame for thinking that. I was actually embarrassed and ashamed, because I was like, that can't be good enough. You know, like that's not worthy enough. And I thought about it, and since then I've realized that that is the truth. But the thing is, my definition of cool is people who use their creativity for a cause, who stick to their values, who make money, and make an impact in society somehow. And that sweet spot, the people who work in that sweet spot are really hard to find. So when I find them, I want to tell the world about them and encourage more people to be like them. So that's why I've started Meteorize, and that's why I'm here in front of you. I'm looking to find my people. And it's funny, because I'm like super nervous to be talking up here for 15 minutes, but I could honestly go on and on and on and on about my people. So for example, some of the people I've met through Meteorize over the past couple of years, people like Jeff, who's the director of Chasing Ice, a documentary that talks about the profound impact that photography has in getting people to care about global warming. Or my friend Greg, who is a full-time artist and supports his wife and 4 kids on activist art that gets people to confront stereotypes about Native Americans and racism in this country. My friend Hosan, who's basically creating like the antithesis to hookup dating apps and wants to create a matchmaking app to spur empathy development. Or Monica and Annie, who just launched a platform to bring exceptional career speakers into high-need schools to get kids, to expose kids to their dream jobs and dream careers. Or Brandon and Joe, who are starting an online platform to end police brutality. Like I said, I could go on and on and on. So I'm looking for my people. And at the same time, I'm really open to serendipity. We've talked about this a little bit in some of our smaller group meetings, but Mandar and Srivi, my co-founders, we actually met through mutual connections on Twitter. And I didn't even meet Srivi until 9 months of working with her remotely, and it was like the first day of our festival, and I shook her hand for the first time. But you know, when it works, it works. And on a personal side story, I met my own boyfriend because he's also an artist and entrepreneur. And he was the bartender at the very first event I ever organized at the very first Benevolent Media Festival 4 years ago. So find my people and never let them go is what I've learned. The second lesson is to just go for it, even if I don't know how to do it. And I wanted to share this quote with you because I recently came across it, and I don't know, it resonated with me. It's by Stephen Pressfield. Ignorance and arrogance are the artist and entrepreneur's indispensable allies. She must be clueless enough to have no idea how difficult her enterprise is going to be, and cocky enough to believe she can pull it off anyway. How do we achieve this state of mind? By staying stupid, by not allowing ourselves to think. So I definitely have my naysayers. I actually met with someone pretty well respected in the DC event scene when I first started out, and asked for some advice and told him about my idea for a festival. It hadn't happened yet. And he was like, there's too many things going on in this city. Like, that's not a festival, that's just an event, that's a conference, that's not a festival. How dare you call it a festival? You should just tie into someone else's thing. No need to start your own thing. You haven't given it a thought. And you know what? He was right. I didn't think about it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I did it again and again and again. And it happened. So go for it, even if I don't know how to do it. The third lesson I've learned is to say yes. So I am a yes woman. I say yes to a lot of things. I like to help. I like a challenge. I like new possibilities. I like meeting people. And I think yes is a really powerful word. And I've learned that it can be a really dangerous word if it comes from a place of fear. So I realized that I said yes out of insecurity. Like I would think, well, wow, someone actually wants to help me? No one else would want to help me, so I'm going to say yes to him. Or, yeah, sure, I'll do that, and even though I have no time and I'm exhausted, but I want you to like me, so yes. And I would say yes over and over and over again at the expense of my own personal well-being. So saying yes is important until I need to say no. You know, there are people who are vampires and they kind of drain me of my energy, or they can't be trusted, or they overstep, and I've learned to surround myself with people who recharge me and nourish me and support me. I've gotten to a point where I would say yes, thinking that if I didn't spend every single moment of the day thinking about my mission and my project and doing things, then I was wasting time, and I would become an insane person and be anxious and burnt out and stressed out, and then unleash all that rage onto people who are closest in my life. And here I am, this seemingly benevolent person, being super angry and mean and stressed out. And what I learned is I'm completely useless if I don't take care of myself, and I can't be a leader of my community if I don't take care of myself. So actually Mandar and Srivi have been really great coaches because they themselves practice yoga and meditation, and they teach meditation, and I'm so happy I found them because they help instill some of that principle into me, and I'm still practicing that. The other thing I've learned is that I am what I am, not what I do. And this is really crucial to remember because I think I get so caught up in doing sometimes, and I think as a so-called community builder, I define myself by my community. And you know, all of the speaking engagements and events and panel discussions, or the liking and retweeting and emailing and all this doing is not who I am. It's just what I do. And sometimes I just want to be, right? Like I just want to be lazy, or be a party animal, or be wild, or be quiet, or be introspective, or just be with family and friends and not do things. And sometimes I'm not great at what I do. I've had events where very few people show up. I've had a speaker feel really pissed off that I didn't get him enough media attention. And I've had serious, like, you know, AV tech support problems. And you know what? I realize I'm just human, and I'm only doing my best. So I am what I am, not what I do. Finally, I'm learning to create. So what I ask myself is, if I were to stop doing everything I'm doing, would the mission of promoting meaningful media still exist? And I would like to think yes, it would, that it could go on without me. And actually, Mitchell Wade, who's in the audience, I'll never forget something he taught me a few years ago that kind of like changed my whole view on all this doing, was that at the end of my life, when I'm no longer here, who's going to do all that doing for me? And so I feel like I'm really on a mission to build an infrastructure where I create something that lasts beyond me. And then also, what I've learned is that over the years, especially with doing events, I've become more of a curator or convener or a platform for other people's creations, and honestly, I kind of miss creating. I miss that little girl who used to scribble pages and pages of notes of stories in her notebook. So my goal this year is to create more, whether it's to write more or start a new art project or design something, you know, or else create or die. And not to be melodramatic about it, but sometimes I think I need to raise the stakes a little so I can really follow through and stick to my word. And you guys can hold me accountable. So thanks for listening.